From the world of AV programming and control with James King, I'm Steve Greenblatt, and this is Ask the Programmer. James, how are you today? It's good to be back and looking forward to our conversation.
I'm doing good, Steve, and I'm looking forward to this episode as well. How are you doing?
Doing pretty well, and we're very fortunate to have a returning guest, somebody who's been with us over 14 times. And if you tuned in last week, you got to hear a little bit about him. I'm going to introduce him now, and we're going to get to know him a little bit better. But he is Dan Ferrisi. He's the group director now of content and editorial, industrial, and tech at Emerald. Welcome back, Dan.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you very much, James. To be on for a 16th time is amazing. And I'm going to keep coming back until you lock the door. So thank you very much for having me.
Keep coming back, Dan. Our episodes with you are always well appreciated and probably get some of the most downloads. So we do appreciate that, and we do get to have a little bit of a unique discussion and get to really have some great insight from you. And when we spoke last in our previous episode, we asked you to talk a little bit about yourself, and you shared a little bit about your investment in the industry for so many years, coming on 20, and your all the changes that you've had through your career. So why don't you continue with that? And I also want to congratulate you too for being a President's Club winner at Emerald for living our values for the Living Our Values Award. So congratulations for that.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. It was a wonderful opportunity to commune with my teammates and my colleagues and peers, learn from them, mind share. It was a wonderful experience. But I really do feel fortunate to have the portfolio that I do, but still to be very much in the trenches of the commercial AV industry, the pro AV industry. As I said in the last episode, I've been to every single InfoComm from InfoComm 2005 up to present, including that small, October 2021 InfoComm during those crazy COVID times. I haven't missed a single one. And that's given me an opportunity to watch a lot of industry change in action. I think back to InfoComm, six, seven, eight, and it's just so different now than it was then, I should say. I remember we were talking about, telepresence and room systems, and they would, in many cases, be super, super hardware centric, hundreds of thousands of dollars, very bulky kind of systems. Now everything is so streamlined, soft codec based. Make it easy. Use Teams. Make it Teams rooms enabled. Make it auto programming in some way, or not auto programming, but like auto sensing, making sure that things are kind of oriented in such a way that you don't need any intervention in real time. No service tickets, no tech having to come in and make the room work. It'll just work in and react in real time to what you want based on presets and whatnot. So it really seems like the word of the day now is frictionless. The word of the day is automated. The word of the day is economical. Bring your own device, make it simple, make it accessible. Don't make the barrier of entry too high, make it democratized. And that is very different, at least from my perception, of the way InfoComm was in six, seven, eight, when it was, again, very, very hardware centric. There was some, black magic, so to speak. Only the integrator knows, only the integrator can make it happen. And the integrator still is foundational, of course, to the ecosystem. But it's not so much about reselling expensive hardware and having incredibly complex systems. It's about facilitating outcomes, guaranteeing outcomes, and being shoulder to shoulder with your client as a strategic advisor, not a keeper of black magic secrets that no one else has, not merely a reseller of expensive hardware systems, but really being in the trenches and being that person shoulder to shoulder with you. That seems to be kind of driving some of the change that I've seen over the industry, over the years that I've been in the industry. What do you think, Steve, James? Have you seen that respectively over the last 10, 15, 20 years?
I love that recap because it's really kind of makes you think, and it makes you think about how much change has occurred. And I was back there with you even prior to those days where it was very secretive and it was very much about installing these very expensive systems that took a lot of expertise and also took a lot of risk too to make sure that you were going to get them to work. Getting something to work was just what was the goal. It wasn't necessarily making it as frictionless as you mentioned, and that's because it was the early days. But I think it's interesting to think back to where how far we've come and how those changes have occurred.
I think you're right. I think the days of kind of a Wizard of Oz operating behind some curtain and only the person behind the curtain knows what's going on. I think those days have passed. There is absolutely and always will be an absolutely critical and indispensable role for the integrator. But I don't think it's to be the man behind the curtain anymore. It's to be the partner sitting alongside you, making sure that outcome is guaranteed every single day with as little friction and as little complexity as possible.
James, you want to weigh in on that?
Right. I've been thinking of this question since Dan asked us this, and it's one thing about change is you don't always see the change when you're living it. But like you said, you sit there right now and you think 10 years ago, you're like, wow, we have come a long way. But you don't realize it when you're going through. I mean, you look at our cell phones, you look at our technology, the AV equipment. We've gone from these big, bulky, 42U racks where things now fit in like a 4U rack. We streamline, we make improvements. So yeah, I definitely think we've come a long way. Has been a lot of changes, and I think that's for the benefit and the con. There are some cons to the changes. One of the ones this is not AV, more IT, and yes, AV is IT. But I remember back when I was a student worker, when a computer got a virus on it, you digged into it, you worked on to get it removed. Awesome. You learned the system. You had that friction you had to work through and you learned from it. Now you re-image the computer, you hit a button, re-image, you start fresh over. People don't have those skills to dive in and actually learn the systems anymore because now it's a simple button. We made our life easier. We made it frictionless in that, which is great. We can get our users up and running quickly, which is great, but at what cost? So sometimes advancing technology, advancing is great, and sometimes I still think there's a cost to it.
Yeah, the oversimplification factor, right?
Yeah.
Well, Dan, thank you for that insight again. And if you didn't catch our previous episode 269, you can learn more about Dan's background. And he really set the stage, I think, for our discussion today. So I will turn the mic over to you, and you can lead us in and ask the programmer question.
Absolutely. And thank you once again for giving me this platform to allow me to be kind of a conduit for our audience and ask the questions that they want to have answered. They might not always have direct access to James and you, Steve, but I do, thankfully. So I want to ask kind of the question on their behalf. And here's one of them. How has AV programming or a programmer's job become easier or harder over the last 10 years? We're already talking about change. We're already talking about over a 10-year time horizon or a 20-year time horizon, how things have evolved for the good or for the bad. So how has the job of a programmer or programming itself become easier or harder? And if you don't want to go easier or harder, simply how has it changed?
We'll jump in on this. And some of the changes I'm seeing is it's almost changing the definition of a programmer in a sense. And what I mean by that was first when you use the term programmer, you sat there and you're like, okay, that is someone who, is writing line codes. Either building software applications for computers, building the AV integration, a lot of line code, a lot of, back end stuff that takes learning and education and skills to hone your craft. Then came out configuration, and Steve does a great thing on programming versus configuring. Uh, and it made it easier. And then people started taking some of that title of a programmer, but all they could do is configuring. And nothing against that. Like I don't think it's wrong. You evolve with the time, and now I'm seeing all these. I'm vibe coding, and they're going to start calling themselves programmers, where all they really are doing is describing what they want to an AI agent who's writing the code for them. Um, so I definitely think one thing I'm seeing is the definition of a programmer has been changing.
Really good point. And I liked where you went with that because it really makes it shows the different twists and turns and I was going to touch on the programming versus configuration thing as well and I think that that's been it really has a place and we've seen that the AV industry is also patterning themselves after other industries where you have no code and low code solutions and then you have full code solutions. One of the things I think that has gotten better is that we have more tools and we have more flexibility and we have more options to be able to get things done. And that speaks to the programming versus configuration, but it also speaks to the fact that, I'll always speak, about the availability of API integrations, modules, drivers, and plugins. You don't always have to write those yourself anymore when you're working with a new product. That's helpful. That's really critical to a programmer's success because the time to do something like that just isn't built into a project. And some programmers, that's just not their specialty. So if we then can move over to specialties, we had Mike Krejci on a few episodes ago, and he talked about how the you need to pick your language that you're going to program in, not because of what your abilities are, but because of the task and also who's going to own this and maintain it and how is it going to be deployed. And there are some programmers who will write the core code, and then there's some programmers who will then do the adjustments in the field, and which is a really interesting way of doing things. And that also speaks to the fact that now programmers can program in teams, and rather than having to do the full stack from A to Z and have your job siloed, which is I think also very valuable. Um, what I see as something, because for somebody who has not programmed in many years, and because I've made a decision to focus on the business side of my career and my organization, the programming itself may be the same, but it's the technology that you're working with that's changed, and we're now talking about everything being on the network. So programmers have to know a lot about networking and also the technology of digital. We didn't have the we 10 years ago we probably were still on the cusp of still working with some analog signals and now everything is done through AV over IP and HD base T and so forth. So programmers need to know all of that. And lastly, there's a lot more platforms out there that programmers need to be familiar with. We fortunately have competition in the industry, and there's also a lot more options for control. So many platforms, whether that's your focus or that's your add-on. There's the ability to control things so many ways these days.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You both brought so many thoughtful comments to the table, and clearly, it's not as simple as just saying easier or harder. It's much, much more nuanced than that. And I think what you mentioned, Steve, about the increasing rise of teams, where it's not just one guy or gal kind of siloed handling everything from A to Z, but allowing people to lean in and focus on specialty areas, and then someone else is responsible for another specialty area. I don't know if that really something has emerged per se in the last 10 years or not. You would be much better positioned to say that than I have. But also just kind of the workflow stuff, separate and apart from the evolution and the option of the tools. It's also the workflow seems to be evolving.
Yeah. And I also wanted to say the involvement with the team and the workflow, which is, I would say is a benefit. It's a pro on, is the availability to use different program language options, where it used to be like, okay, if you're programming a AV system, even if you're working as a programming team, it had to be the same language. And now a lot of these manufacturers are now supporting multiple languages, and options within their systems that allows a one programmer who might be a phenomenal configurator, a, another programmer who's really a line coder, and another programmer who's a vibe coder to actually work together on a project without going, okay, we have to compromise and go with this way of doing things that might only be a strength of one of them, but now each of them can bring their strengths to the project, and that can enhance our projects even further.
We could also talk about the UI portion of it too, which I think has evolved quite a bit, where we're in the HTML world, and there's also different options for designing your UI, and the UI has evolved quite a bit, and that's because I think that there's different benchmarks that people base the what is a good UI on, and the familiarity that people have with it. Where we went from uh, Windows maybe to Apple to now Zoom and Teams, or the interface that people are most frequently using. So that it requires a lot of change and a lot of know-how, but the specialties can be found in those areas as well.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about it. And I think not just in programming, but really across our industry, across industry as a whole, it seems like people have kind of had a revelation that rather than being a jack of all trades, master of none, finding areas in which you can really focus, can dig deep, can be the subject matter expert, and have a team around you can have their subject matter expertise in ancillary or peripheral areas, complementary areas. That seems to be, I think, a key to unlocking genuine excellence, not dabbling in everything and being competent in everything, but being a true specialist in one thing, surrounding yourself with other teams of true specialists, and working in perfect synchronicity.
I very much agree and want to point out that I think that that's a great way for us to be able to invite people into our industry. So you can find people that are specialists and do have the focus and the know-how and could potentially bring knowledge to the team that wasn't there previously, rather than trying to find this unicorn, as we always say, that knows everything. So another great topic, Dan, and I hope that we've answered the question the way your audience would like to hear, and also have been informative for the people who are listeners and consumers of Ask the Programmer.
Absolutely. I think you and James did a great job. I know that our audience will be very appreciative to have again that direct access to you all to have their questions answered. So thank you again for having me on for a 16th time. I'm honored and I'm flattered. And also thank you for giving me an opportunity to walk a little bit down memory lane and think back to my sound and communications days and everything that I've moved on to since then.
Absolutely, Dan, and you'll be back again soon. So listeners, stay tuned. And we've talked a little bit about Infocom, and we're recording this in May of 2026. So that Infocom is coming. If you're listening to this in real time, make sure that when you see Dan, he's going to be busy, but stop him, say hello. And if you are going to be at Infocom, making that connection is really going to be valuable to both you and to Dan. So please reach out to him. And if you're not going to be at Infocom, Dan, share how people can get in touch with you, learn more about your publications, and also make a connection for the future.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate that. So, of course, you can find me at commercialintegrator.com. If you're in the security space, electronic security, you can go to securitysales.com. If you're in the custom home and residential integration space, we have cepro.com. And the other one in my group, Demand Gen Report, if you're interested in demand gen marketing, AI infused marketing tactics, how to build strong pipeline and really interact with the buyer channel, you can go to demandgenreport.com. That's my whole portfolio. You can find me at any of those, and of course on LinkedIn as well.
Thank you, Dan. Again, we really appreciate the insight you brought and also how you were able to inspire us to share more with our audience. So thank you for that opportunity, and we look forward to having you back soon.
Thank you again.
James, any final thoughts and how can people get in touch with you and continue this conversation?
Great episode. You want to get a hold of me, go Google me, you'll find me. I'm out there. Thank you.
Excellent. And James will also be very busy at Infocom, but make sure that you stop him or me. We really like to hear from you. We'd really like to connect, and we'd really like to know you're out there. So please make sure that you stop either of us and say hi. You could also find me on social platforms at Steve Greenblatt. LinkedIn is the place that I am the most active. You can find this podcast on YouTube in the video version, or if you're listening, you can also find it on your favorite podcast player. My company, Control Concepts, is a supporter of this podcast, and we build the building blocks and components that programmers use to integrate products or add more functionality to their systems. You could find out more about that at controlconcepts.net. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Until next time, this has been Ask the Programmer.